Hi all, my name is Sam Rudnick. I'm AUM Growth Manager here at eToro, so I'm responsible for managing our popular investor program and marketing our investment instruments, which are our copy funds. Thank you for joining this evening's webinar. We've got a very unique webinar. Obviously it's the UK election taking place on Thursday, therefore we've got 3 UK investors that are followed by thousands of people on the platform and have combined amount of hundreds of copiers. They will be talking about their strategies, talking about how the election may affect the markets, and also themselves just in general talking about interesting maybe news such as Wes will be discussing cryptocurrencies, Martyn will be discussing his investment strategy and specific stocks that he has invested, and Mark will be doing the same as well. All 3 of them have unique strategies and have been, as you can see, profitable lately. So we're going to hear from them, and you can also ask questions yourselves as well, and we'll discuss the election in general and the possible outcomes. First of all, I just want, for the UK clients who are listening, I just wanted to obviously send our wishes. We know it's been a difficult time, of course, in the UK over the past couple of weeks. We hope that all your family and friends are safe. So first of all, just going to, first of all going to quickly cover each of, we're going to quickly cover each of these 3 popular investors. They're going to introduce themselves, and we're going to hear from them. So first of all, just going to start off with Martyn. So we'll just hold on a moment. Just gonna get Martyn. Hi Martyn, are you there? Hi Martyn.
Hi,
Very good. We've got your page up here, Martyn. Quickly before I introduce get you to introduce yourself to everyone who are listening, I just want people to maybe some people here who aren't copying on the platform, who maybe aren't following other traders, just want to quickly show them how to copy, and just to go over the basics. This is a UK election 2017 profile I created. It's copying and following UK traders on the platform. Here you can see them here. Got David Peddle, Investus Maximus, Mark, you're going to hear from later, Martyn, Steve Chadaway, Steve Chadaway, just scroll down here, Wes Nolte, Stephen Bliss, and of course Martyn, who's with us. So what's happening is I'm copying Martyn currently with $13,000, and you can see here that when I started copying his open trade. So he comes up in my portfolio copying Martyn, the current performance. Martyn has an impressive performance over the last 12 months, so I'm copying him currently at the moment. At the moment I've got a small drawdown, but I'm not really too bothered because I think that maybe in a year or 2 I'll get a very solid return from his investment strategy, which has proved successful over the past couple of years on eToro. You can see here proportionally the trades that are open. So because I'm copying him with $13,000 and he's opened a trade that's around 2% of selling the UK 100, that means that it's a $580 trade in my account. So everything's proportional. So that's how it works. So that's basically how copying works on the platform. When Martyn closes that UK 100 trade, then that means it will close either in profit or a loss when he chooses to close and then when he opens a new trade, it will open again in my portfolio. So that's basically that. So Martyn, there we go. I think that explains covers copy trading. Hopefully most of you are already copying. I've clicked now on your profile, Martyn. If you could just give us just a rundown of who you are, how you came to eToro, and your investment strategy.
Yeah, sure. So I've been investing for nearly 10 years now. I've got a background in finance, so trading is not only my hobby, it's what I enjoy. I spend most of my time researching markets, and that led me to eToro because I wanted to take the next step and kind of have my own fund, which I could share with other people. and get other people investing along with me. And if you've been on eToro for any length of time, you'll know it's a fantastic platform where you're able to interact with other traders. You know, you can see their history, you can see their trades, you can interact with them. And it was, I came to eToro because it was the ideal platform for me to, you know, take my trading to the next level and get people to invest with me. The trading I focus on is mainly equities because that's my background, equities, equity research, and my trading tends to be over, I'm not like a trader in the true sense. I tend to invest over the medium to long term, looking at equities and researching them to try and find equities that are undervalued and try to exploit that. For example, last year I identified that Apple was undervalued at about $95 a share, and it became the linchpin of my portfolio over 2016. At the time, most analysts and most investment banks were putting out research that Apple was finished. Its best days were behind it. It was a no growth stock, and it wasn't to be touched with a barge pole. 12 months later, the same analysts are recommending everybody invest in it, currently $155 a share. So it just shows you how much sentiment can change in 12 months. At the moment, my positions are currently once again being affected by politics, in particular this UK election we have at the moment. So when copying, I recommend that you at least have a 12-month investment outlook in your investments. The classic examples, this time last year, we were all sitting there watching our investments tank 30% that we had in the FTSE as the United Kingdom voted to leave the European Union. On that morning, the FTSE 100 stocks opened down 30%, but if you look at the performance over the course of the year, the FTSE was actually up 10%. So you had a 40% swing in about 6 months. So it's a classic example of why I believe you need to, at least be investing for at least 12 months so that you're not caught in the incredible volatility that politics can have on your investments.
Thanks very much, Martyn. That's good. That's good to hear from you. And we'll actually get back to some of your portfolio later in the conversation. And also, obviously with your accent, you're from Scotland, so we'll also discuss as well locally what's happening there, because that may have an impact as well. The result in Scotland may have an impact in more of the may have an effect on the markets themselves
yes.
as well. We'll discuss that further.
Yes.
All right, I'm just going to put you back on mute. We'll discuss, we'll cover some questions in regards to the election and speak to you in a bit. Those of you who are listening who are not following Martyn, you can add him to your watch list now as well and have a look at him. We're just going to cover some of the other traders on the platform as well. Just going to move on to Wes Nolte, who's with us. How are you going? How are you going, Wes? Everything good?
Yeah. Hey, everyone. Yeah, so answering your question, I think your initial question, I came to the platform through a friend who told me about this social trading platform. I quite liked the way that you could get a lot of information from a number of various viewpoints from the platform, and also benefit from copying people that know more than you about a particular part of the world economy. You can't know everything, right? I also quite like the leverage mechanism, and I think I got burnt by it probably in my first 2 months, and then learned how to deal with it a bit better and use it to my advantage. So my background, I'm a technology consultant. I've been doing that for quite a long time. I invest through eToro, but I also have a portfolio outside of eToro. eToro is probably I'd consider my medium risk investment vehicle. My other investment vehicles are index funds and property outside of eToro. You will notice in the list that it's quite technology heavy, and I guess this is influenced by my career. So I end up absorbing a lot of information, whether I like it or not, about certain types of companies. So I feel like I'm pretty well placed to know when's a good time to invest or when to take money out of those particular investments. You'll also notice that I've got some Ethereum in there. I think Ethereum and blockchain or cryptocurrencies or altcoins, whichever term you like to use, have become more and more popular on the platform and in the world actually. And I've been involved in blockchain technology probably since 2013, 2012 as a miner, mining Dogecoins and Litecoins and Bitcoins way back then.
That's very interesting, Wes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we can delve into that a little bit as well later. I think it's maybe there are some people here who don't actually know what Ethereum really is. They may be speculating. They may be they have invested in it just seeing the quite astronomical returns that we've been seeing, but not really understanding what that is. So I think it would be helpful for you later, I think, when we discuss some of the positions you're holding. You can maybe explain to the audience listening what Ethereum means to you and how you see Ethereum in the long term, how it will affect our daily lives, the digital native, I suppose, in the future.
I'd be happy to. Yeah.
That's great. Fantastic. That's good. So so what I'm going to do is I'm going to move on. I've just put you on mute as well. I'm going to move over to Mark as well, who's joined us, Investus Maximus. We're going to hear Mark. Can you hear me?
Hi, Sam. Yes.
Great. Thanks for being with us. I know, Mark, you've been with us for quite a few years at eToro and got a very interesting story as well. You bring an additional advantage for someone who's looking to diversify their portfolio on the platform. Wes, Mark, and Martyn all have different investment strategies and are all positive. So if you want to explain to everyone here who you are, how you came to eToro, and your strategy.
Sure. Thanks, Sam. Hi, everybody. Thanks for attending the webinar. So my background was, I guess I'm in my sort of third career, trying to be a sort of trader and investor now. My first career was in accountancy and finance, but I'd always wanted to sort of run my own business, so I worked for as long as I could bear it, and then eventually quit to start my own business, which was in e-commerce and importing. So I did that, and so sort of backtracking a little bit, all the way through that, sort of since I sort of got my first job and had some spare money, I've sort of had investing as a hobby, a very casual hobby, just sort of like in investment trusts and passive, like FTSE trackers and SP 500 trackers. So, and then the occasional pick of a company if something sort of is a bit opportunistic, but if something like bad happened in the world and stocks went down a lot, then I'd sort of like buy something that was depressed a lot. So that was just a very casual sort of hobby through my career and running my own business. And then in 2014, I sort of came across eToro on a BBC documentary, which I think was called Traders Millions or Millions by the Minute, something like that. And I just thought, and they had a little section as part of that, which was eToro. The whole thing wasn't on eToro, but there was a bit about like the future of investing and the future of trading, and it sort of featured eToro as this sort of Facebook meets investing, and it just was very appealing, and I immediately checked it out. And they spoke about obviously traders that were trading profitably and that people could copy them, and I thought, well, this is great, I could just put some money into this and other people can work for me and make me money, which was great. And that's obviously the theory, and that's what I'm trying to do for my copiers, every day at the minute. So, and at the time, there was actually, picking copiers can be a difficult job. So, and I picked a few copiers that worked well, but I also picked a few that ended up being quite gambly. So they took big risks. And eventually, the funds I allocated to them, I like hit my stop losses on some of those traders, and so lost a bit of money, and made a bit of money on other traders. And that's really what inspired me to start my own account, where I would attempt to become a popular investor, because I didn't like the risks that some of these people took, and I thought it was very, unjust that they take risks with other people's money like that, very disrespectful. So I trade with probably an over-conservative approach, just to because I'm very, very wary about that I'm responsible for other people's money, and I don't want to lose other people's money, but being a bit conservative can lead to my returns being a bit lower than some other people. Like Wes has made an amazing 82% over the last year, whereas I've roughly made about 10%. So you can see the difference there, and some of that will be in our approach and in our appetite to risk. So my actual strategy has been changing. So I don't use any leverage, and I like to focus on companies that have very international exposure. So in a way to protect against exactly the thing. Sorry, Sam? Oh, sorry. To protect against the sort of things we have now. In America we have some political uncertainty, and in the UK we have political uncertainty, and we did have a bit in Europe with the French election. So if anything bad happens in one country, then my sort of theory is that the companies that are trading all the way across the globe, you're less exposed to the one negative event if a company just has a domestic market. And that's part of my approach, to look for companies I believe in for the future that have strong balance sheets, good cash, good sort of contract or customer potential in the world, and invest not too heavily in any one, and sort of like spread that money out. Not having all my eggs in one basket type approach. So yeah, is that okay, Sam?
Yeah, that's great, Mark. Thanks very much. And I know that we'll also discuss some of, towards the end of the conversation, discuss specifically some of your other positions as well, which we'll go into. So that's great. Just put you on mute there. Now, all of you have also joined us because, of course, these three investors as well want to share some of their insights about what's going to happen over the next couple of days. Mark touched on the fact that we have political uncertainty in the UK, in America, globally. So there is political certainty. There's political certainty in the sense that there's political uncertainty. That's something that we can be certain about. Before this call, I thought I'd just search on Google, the opinion polls that that are taking place, the latest opinion polls. Obviously, different sites have different interests. I know that in the UK, of course, different. There are different sites. I understand that maybe right, more conservative leaning, more Labour, left leaning. Just click on the first one that comes up. It might not be, obviously, not necessarily impartial, from the Daily Telegraph, odds tracker in the final week of their campaigning. So, I mean, it's showing that here we look at the latest poll averages in the UK, suggesting that, and I think most polls seem to suggest certainly a tightening over the last few days. So that shows that the Conservatives won't necessarily have a strong majority. They could increase their majority slightly. They may only have a slight majority. It could be a hung parliament. Not many polls are showing a slight Labour victory, but you never know. We just had Brexit last year, where I can't recall one poll suggesting close to the vote itself that there was going to be a win for the Leave camp. In the end, they won by a couple of percent. So we certainly could see that, for Labour, nothing is predictable at all. So I thought that we'd just start off hearing what will necessarily happen to the markets dependent upon different scenarios. So in regards to the Conservative government in the UK currently already have a slight majority. I just wanted to put the question, we'll start off putting the question to Martyn. I'm just going to ask you, Martyn, what do you think will happen if the current majority stays the same? Do you believe that this will have a negative effect on the markets? Do you think we've seen a rally in the pound lately? How do you reckon the markets will react to this?
Well, I think what would happen is, if the Conservatives can get a good majority, then that's the most positive outcome for this election. for example, when I first started researching this election for my blog post, the Conservatives were forecast to win a landslide. They were forecast to win about 400 seats up from their about 330 seats currently, so they were projecting to win about another 70 seats on top of what they had currently. But obviously the polls appear to have tightened considerably in the last couple of weeks, which has had a negative impact, particularly in some UK equities. Looking when the election was announced, I thought that it would be positive, because not only would the Conservative government have the chance to increase their majority, they would also have the chance to fight off a second independence referendum in Scotland, because even though they're polling, not great in England, surprisingly, the Conservatives, they've actually surged in support in Scotland. The Conservative vote in Scotland is as strong as it's never been probably as strong as this in 50 years, due to the rise in, people wanting to fight off nationalism. And, it was shaping up to be a hugely positive election where, Theresa May could substantially increase her Conservative majority at Westminster for Brexit, and at the same time fight off the prospect of a second independence referendum, because the more Conservatives MPs in Scotland, the less that the SNP could fight back and say they had no mandate to rule in Scotland, because currently there's only one Conservative MP in Scotland, the rest of them are SNP. But at this election, the Conservatives are forecast to win, a considerable number and take about 30% of the vote. What's become really, really interesting in the past couple of weeks is the Labour surge, particularly in England, where the Conservatives seem to have lost a huge share of the vote. It could, at the moment, you need 324 seats in the UK Parliament to be able to say that you've got a majority. And at the moment, the Conservatives, it's touch and go whether they've got that majority. Interestingly, it could be Scotland where they pick up the seats that would see them have a Conservative government voted in, due to them taking seats off the SNP. So it's a fascinating election, in terms of the scenarios that, could come of this. I still expect the Conservatives to, win the most MPs. Whether they get a considerable majority or not, that's questionable at the moment, and we're starting to see the negative impact of that impact in the UK stocks, and in particular some stocks in my portfolio have suffered in the last couple of weeks when we've seen the polls tightening.
So I just want to bring in, I'm just going to bring in Mark there. You mentioned that you think, Martyn, that the Conservatives will, you think that the Conservatives will take this election. Mark, do you agree with Martyn?
The polls seem to show that, yeah. So, I mean, I've been posting over the last sort of 5 or 6 weeks since you asked me to sort of start doing some election updates. And, I mean, the polls, they keep tightening from that very first one I did, which was when people were talking about the Conservatives getting the sort of 100-plus seat majority. But at the same time, like you mentioned, when you had that website tracker up, there's no polls that actually show Labour in the lead.
I was going to mention, I just put up a poll there from the Independent that suggests today that the Conservatives are going to be 20 seats short of an outright majority. Do you think that's exaggerated? Do you think that's highly unlikely?
I think it's highly likely, but not to discount the fact that they do still hold the lead in most of the polls. I think, is that the YouGov model,
correct,
isn't it? That's the new YouGov model, which is untested really because it's brand new from them. So this is sort of like the guinea pig general election for them. So I think they used it, they trialled it in the referendum last year, but it's never been used in a general election to know its reliability. So
That's interesting. That's interesting to know. Yeah, I mean, I think there's more debate about the polls than there are themselves about the election. It's just because of the dubious polls that we've seen both in the UK in the past year and in the States.
Yeah.
If you, in regards to your stock positions in UK stocks, if the Conservatives maintain the current majority they have, do you think that there will be a negative impact? Because we saw when Theresa May called this election, and the opinion polls showed that there would be a strong Conservative victory. We saw stocks rallying, and people felt that that may have a positive short-term impact on the markets. And then we obviously saw the UK 100 drop when last week's polls showed that there would be a narrow victory for the Conservatives. So, how do you think the markets are going to react to what result?
I think it's really hard to tell, especially if you look at the FTSE 100, because that's very insulated from our domestic situation. And looking at the pound, I mean, I quite often look at cable, which is the pound against the US dollar. Now, at the minute, you sort of like think that pound's relatively strong, but that's because there's a lot of weakness in the dollar at the minute. So if you look at the pound this month against currencies like the Australian dollar and the New Zealand dollar and the Japanese yen, then the pound's down, against all of those quite substantially. So, and again, that weakness in all of those is supportive of the FTSE, at least because of its international bias. So, and that's one of the reasons I purposely stayed away from domestic UK stocks. So all the stocks I own which are UK, I own 11 stocks which are UK, with the exception of Barclays, which has quite a bit of its income from the UK, obviously retail banking customers. I've sort of like looked at international stocks because I do think, not because of the election, but more because there's a lot of noise from the election, but really the real event is still Brexit, which is to follow. So, I still think there'll be a bit of a souring of the UK domestic economy, so you're safest in the international elements of UK listed companies. So.
That's interesting. Yeah, and of course, in terms of Brexit negotiations, do you think that what do you think would be the best outcome in terms of the vote, in terms of the UK entering into negotiations with the EU? Take into account that in the part, I think it's interesting in the sense that a Conservative majority, the fact that it's unlikely that Labour will have a strong majority, therefore a strong Conservative majority, people are seeing, or even a Conservative majority, people believe that negotiations, will favour that government. Britain will have a stronger hand. At the same time, Jeremy Corbyn has never been, who's a Labour leader, has never been perceived to be a strong supporter of the EU himself. So what do you think, what government do you think will give Britain a stronger hand?
I think I mean, I've become a bit conflicted on this recently because I was very much of the view that the markets would, like they sort of reacted, they would prefer the strong Tory result, and so they have, more power to negotiate and possibly a sort of stronger looking government, sort of front bench, and sort of more, I don't know, just sort of like more steely, like, Theresa May has this thing where, no deal is better than a rubbish deal. Which I think people quite like that she's sort of taken this approach that she'll stand up to Europe. So I think the markets sort of did like that, but I did make a mention recently about the fact that when it looked like when there was a little bit of talk about the fact that there could be a Lib Dem, Labour, SNP coalition, the pound did actually rally a bit on that. And I found that quite interesting because it actually makes you think that, well, even though you might not think they've got particularly a strong leadership or that be a very stable government, they are, in terms of their manifestos, they are all pro-European parties. So they're most likely to want to they're most likely to sort of give a deal which makes the pro-Euro position favoured in terms of, keeping access to the markets open and free movement and keeping tariffs down. Maybe at the expense of it being the best deal. Who's to know the answer to that? But in terms of the economics of it, that might actually, the markets might suddenly turn on their heads and say, well, we quite like this, even if it looked like a bad result. They might say, well, we quite like this. This will be a good result for Europe, and we might have less companies leaving London to set up European bases because there's more chance of them sort of doing an open deal now.
Interesting. Do you think that, so therefore you think that a Labour Lib Dem may be perceived as a soft Brexit, and therefore the markets will take less of a shock, whereas the Conservative government therefore could be perceived as hard Brexit, and therefore there might be a different reaction in regards to that? Is that what you're suggesting?
Yeah, I mean that's
right,
what I'm sort of thinking medium term. I don't think any of that matters in terms of Thursday, because I think the shock result of the possibility of a Labour Lib Dem coalition would be taken as a negative, but I think it's like one of them things that there's what happens as the initial reaction and how you trade into that if you want to trade it, and then there's the actual what happens in a couple of months' time when people have to start sitting around a table in Brussels and talking about these things. So in a way, I see the election as noise, and we really need to stay focused on the next couple of years and what the UK looks like when we're actually outside of the European Union.
Absolutely. I'm just going to bring in Wes as well. I know that most of his stock portfolio is focused on US stocks, some blue chip stocks that we'll discuss. Have you deliberately done that, stayed away from the UK market, or is that? I know that we'll discuss as well your cryptocurrencies. I know that that's you're more focused on the digital. The digital economy. I suppose that's how we can define that. It's not affected by cryptocurrencies are not necessarily driven by global macro news. They're more, the price tends to be affected by usage, technological advances. When the blockchain, I know there's it's fine. You're free to disagree. Absolutely. I mean, I just find that when we see a jump in price, tend to find it's because Japan may have adopted more adopted Bitcoin on a wider basis. Just the price doesn't spike as much as the pound dollar would on let's say an interest rate announcement. I mean, there's no doubt that there's an effect. I think that actually will be a long-term effect, actually, cryptocurrencies, when there's a market, when we see maybe a global recession potentially. Do you think in the short term, do you think cryptocurrencies are affected by these events?
I do, but I think that I have also traded banking stocks, UK domestic banks previously, and I think there might be opportunities there too. I've been toying with the idea. I think that, I mean, as you were discussing previously, I think in the short term, everything that I've read at the moment is saying that London City, expects a strong Tory majority despite the most recent polling information. I think. And then I have also heard similar whisperings to what Mark has said, where perhaps a hung parliament won't be such a bad thing, but I think that the city is still, despite the polls, thinking it's going to be a strong Tory majority. Now, when the city thinks one thing and something else entirely happens, the difference happens, then there's going to be huge volatility and the chance to potentially make a bit of money off of that. So I have been thinking potentially about stocks such as Lloyd's, potentially RBS. I know that the investment part of those banks isn't as big anymore, but I'm pretty sure that they would take a bit of a hit if the city's expectation turned out to be wrong. I also think that money has been running particularly to Bitcoin when there is a lot of volatility in the market. I think maybe more US politics is affecting this than UK politics, but something as big as Brexit and a UK general election all tied up together is probably a big enough event that will affect the global economy, including the US. So money runs to gold and potentially Bitcoin, which I think is more or less seen as the gold of cryptocurrencies for now.
Right. So I think when I asked you earlier, what does Ethereum mean to you? It was actually specifically exactly that. When when I think of, or a lot of people think of Bitcoin, they think of gold. When people think of
Yeah.
Ethereum, they think of oil. Kind of in a way. Some people have different interpretations about how they can transmit
Yeah.
that to maybe people who don't understand, how blockchains work, etc. How would you
Yeah.
explain to people who are listening here, who maybe don't have the understanding of computer programming or that kind of knowledge? How would you explain to them what Ethereum is and how it will apply to their daily lives, even though they're not necessarily a tech nerd or geek like us?
I've thought about how to arrive at an analogy.
Hello?
Hi there. Yeah.
Hello?
Can you hear me? Have you got me? Hey.
Oh, sorry, we just lost you for a minute there. Yeah, sorry,
Okay.
it was, I just finished my question. Sorry
All right.
about it.
So in terms of an analogy, I've thought of a few, and none fits exactly, but I think there are a few that work. I think that the kind of revolution we're looking at when it comes to blockchain technology is, if you think about the way that the world is moving to, everything's moving to the cloud, has been for a while and continues to do so. That's been a type of, I would say, an industrial or digital revolution. I think the move to blockchain will be similar and probably further reaching in terms of scale and impact. There are already a number of classes of applications that are being moved to blockchain. As for what is Ethereum, I think probably the best analogy is a global operating system, so upon which you can build applications and then use the resources of that underlying operating system. So you can imagine on your phone, whether you're an Android or an Apple person, you run a particular operating system, iOS or Android, and you can install applications into that, and they use the underlying operating system to facilitate the operations of those applications. So Ethereum has built into it a way to build these applications and then also fuel the way that they work. Ethereum itself then being not just an operating system, but also, and this is where the analogy breaks down, an economy. It's also similar to a government in some ways, in that it's the economy that fuels not a country in this case, but a collection of companies. So I hope that's a little bit clear. I know I've tried to combine two analogies there.
It's fine, Wes. I mean, in the future, we'll probably have some webinars with our CEO, Yoni Assia, who's very much an evangelist. He's been for many years, in regards to blockchain, Bitcoin, Ethereum, and of course eToro is a platform that enables these crypto, is a financial services platform that enables these people to trade and invest in these cryptocurrencies. So we'll be happy to involve you in the debate, Wes.
All right.
And if people got any questions, I suppose they can, hopefully you've got the time. I don't want to send thousands of people to your feed, but you can feel free to ask questions as well on Wes's feed as well, and he can explain why he trades it, his long-term view, etc. In regards to the price as well, you're invested in Ethereum. There's obviously lots of speculators, there's lots of investors, there's lots of traders. A lot of people, Ethereum's very different to Bitcoin in the sense that and shares in the sense that they have a limited number. Shares have a limited number. Bitcoin has a limited number of Bitcoins. Therefore, is Ethereum in a bubble? Is it a deflationary? Is it deflationary? What's your view in terms of the long-term price?
I think that we will look back and laugh at how low the price once was, at the opportunity to get in like we can at $258.44 right now. Bitcoin has become quite successful for a number of reasons, and maybe some of those reasons are quite shady, because of the darker part of the global economy. But Ethereum it's out in the light. It's backed by dozens, many of the biggest enterprises in the world. And when you look at it as more than just a currency or a thing to speculate upon, if it could achieve the adoption that it looks to be achieving now, I mean, it's been used globally for a number of projects, you could see it, I mean, it seems quite laughable to say, but becoming as big as the internet itself, in which case the price right now is laughable. So you can tell I'm a little bit bullish on it.
Sure. But if there's an unlimited supply, how do we
Yeah.
know, how can we value the price? You know, with Bitcoin, many people have set different algorithms in terms of supply and demand and usage about how the price can change over time. But with Ethereum, there isn't a set amount, you know, so it's hard for me to get my head around, therefore, you know, where the price can go and where it can move.
It's true. It's a far more complicated picture, and they are able to deflate they are able to add more currency into circulation. I don't know, but I have faith in the people that have created the technology, and also there are a number of organizations that are joining up to be the joint governors of the currency, people that I don't think would let it run down to zero. I guess it probably needs, and this is kind of strange because blockchain's all built around the decentralized concept, but it needs some kind of proper governance around exactly that, the issuance of additional currency into the ecosystem to manage it effectively. Other than that, I really don't know. It's a very, very complex picture, as complex as any other Forex, I guess, except that it's not Forex, it's a world operating system.
Sure, and that's what you know, eToro likes to embrace. You know, we see ourselves as the future of finance, and we've got instruments that we believe potentially will be very much embedded in, you know, in our daily lives.
Mm-hmm.
You know, whether people are aware of that or not. And in regards to mentioning the people who are behind it, Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, there's always debates about who invented it, who started it. Vitalik Buterin, who founded Ethereum, he actually worked with eToro on a project, Colored Coins, which an offshoot company, Colu, was founded, which enables, which colors coins in a way and allows people digital currencies to actually trade them. Physically, you know, on physical assets, physical assets. So you know, putting that into wider usage. So thanks, Wes. I really appreciate that and your input. We'll also discuss one of the instruments while I've got you on the line. I'll also bring in Mark as well, because I know that you both are invested, you know, in blue chip stocks as well. Let me just bring up your portfolio yourself as well while we're here. I know that you've got. Oh yeah, you wanted to also. I know that you've got advanced micro devices. You've invested in that. I know that you have your own view on that stock. Do you want to maybe share that with the audience?
Yeah, they're an interesting company and strangely tied into the crypto conversation, or maybe not so strangely, depending on how much of a geek you are. So the AMD's share price has risen significantly today. I think it hit 7% and maybe is just under 7% at the moment. The share price took quite a knock initially with what I'm calling the Trump effect a few weeks back. Where Trump was causing a whole bunch of nonsense in the US, and has been depressed. The price has been heavily depressed over the past few weeks, and yesterday and today has risen incredibly. Part of that is because I'm not sure how many people know, but the Apple WWDC event is on at the moment. It started yesterday, and Apple announced a new line of hardware. iMacs, and there will be AMD chips in the GPUs for those. But also, it's been realized that I'm not sure why this has come as a surprise, but AMD is actually selling a lot more of their devices than people have anticipated because they're being used for mining. So mining cryptocurrencies. So for those who don't know, if you're able to create cryptocurrencies by mining them, executing a complex algorithm, and if you have a very powerful graphics card or a number of those graphics cards, you can actually mine, you can bring those currencies into existence. And AMD has some of the best cards in the world for that, particularly when you consider the price point. So AMD's seen quite a nice uptick in the past day or two as these two big events have hit the news.
That's very interesting, Wes. Thanks. I was unaware that Advanced Micro Devices were were backing as well, mining as well. So that's very interesting as well. So I'm sure people, once again, if they're following you or copying you, or if you're not already, then follow Wes to hear more about those stocks as well. Mark, I know that you've also invested in some blue chip stocks as well. You want to share with us those these strategies and why you've invested in these stocks?
Yeah, I mean, while looking at the chip stocks, similar to AMD, slightly different reasons, I guess, for Wes possibly, if he's sort of focused a little bit more on that sort of crypto side of it. But I've got, I think, like 4 different chip manufacturers. And sort of part of my strategy is I quite like these sort of to go for themes. So I sort of do a bit of research on something that might come up as something for the future. So and what got me onto the chip manufacturers, like I've got Intel and Qualcomm and Texas Instruments and Micron, which are all in the sort of semiconductor space. And the reason wasn't because I particularly liked these companies for any reason. Well, I mean, I did like these companies when I chose them, but what started the thing was this whole massive sort of revolution that's going on for the future with like drone technology, augmented reality, autonomous driving. And I just sort of, if you just sort of look at that space, you just like think, well, the computational power for everything, everything is sensors, bringing in data, and, you have to make very fast computations on that data if you're going to have a car that has to decide to like steer, brake, whatever it might be, turn windscreen wipers on, and obviously drones, drones flying around doing automatic things like Amazon looking at using drones to deliver groceries and, all sorts of things going on. So it just made me take a very bullish position really on, the people that are going to make all the processes that are going to go into everything that this entails. So that's an example of picking the theme that come from something that you observe happening, and then doing some research and sort of like thinking of how you want to play that, how I want to play that out. So, and picking some of the chip manufacturers was my sort of my way of playing that out really for the next few years, and I will stick with those chip companies unless I see something to sort of turn me off them particularly. So. And I was watching AMD, so Wes has got a nice position there. I was watching AMD hoping that it was going to come down and just test the support that they recently had at $10, and it didn't quite get there. It sort of stalled at about $10.50 and has bounced from there. So I would have had AMD in the portfolio, but it didn't quite get to my entry area that I was interested at it from. So, but maybe that will come if the Nasdaq gives a little sell-off at some point over the summer.
So I think that's very interesting, Mark, and I think it's interesting for people on the platform who are copying different types of traders. It's not necessarily just about the number you're seeing in terms of the return. We've been emphasizing this today in terms of copying is long-term. It's a year or two. It's about also avoiding those drawdown in the markets and exposing yourself to the industries that are going to be there for the future. If you're looking to diversify your portfolio, and people should be looking to have a diversified portfolio in terms of managing their risk, you can expose yourself to Mark, who's invested in infrastructure stocks and blue chip stocks that are invested in technology, as he mentioned, driverless vehicles, and he's exposed to Intel as well, that of course bought out Mobileye, that provided technologies to connected cars, smart vehicles. So if you're looking to expose yourself to that underlying world, if you see that that's the future, then Mark Investus Maximus may be an interesting person. Of course, Wes as well as looking at stocks and of course invest in Ethereum, but looking at stocks as well that are exposing themselves as well to cryptocurrencies. So I think that's very interesting. I want to also bring in Martyn as well, because I know that in his stock portfolio, just going to bring you into the conversation, Martyn. You with us? Hello. Hi, Martyn.
Hello. Hi.
I know that, just going to bring up your portfolio here while people are listening. I know that we've looked at the two different strategies now, sort of in depth, or as much as we can during this call of Mark and Wes. I know that you yourself have, you're not simply a buy and hold stock investor. You're looking at event-driven stocks as well, and I know that you wanted to discuss as well your position you've got on Sky.
Yeah, absolutely. Sky is a really interesting stock. Not many people probably know, but it's actually agreed a takeover, and it's been offered at £10.75 a share by Rupert Murdoch and his News Corporation in America. Now, it's just a good example of how politics can affect your stock holdings, because basically what happened with the Sky takeover was the culture secretary referred the takeover to Ofcom, and Ofcom were supposed to give their opinion on the takeover in April, but that got postponed due to the election. So because of that, and because of the tightening in the polls, where we've seen the Conservatives' lead being eroded, it's been trading quite erratically. I mean, if you look at the chart there of the last 2 weeks in particular, that fall is due to the polls where we're seeing the Conservatives' lead fall, because basically what's happening is the market's getting a bit jittery, because even though Ofcom are due to report after the election, they don't know if the market doesn't know if they're going to be reporting back to the same culture secretary that referred the bid to them in the first place. So yeah, I mean, my trading strategy is based on picking out special situations and try to take advantage of those. I'm 99% confident that the takeover will go through. Even back in 2010 or 2011, when Rupert Murdoch first tried to take over control of Sky, the deal wasn't torpedoed by Ofcom. Ofcom didn't disagree with the deal, but it was obviously the phone hacking situation at the News of the World that put bid to the takeover at the time. Yeah, so it's Sky's an interesting situation where there's a good 10% upside on the table there. The date is the 20th of June. That's when Ofcom are going to come back with their decision. So it's just a little over 2 weeks' time. There could be a 10% pop in that stock, and I'm pretty confident that will happen. But in the last couple of weeks, it's been, my portfolio has been impacted by this election and the politics of it. So it just goes to show, when you're investing, you do need to take a longer time frame with your investments, because, God knows how many times we've seen in the past year or two where, political situations have had, caused huge volatility in the markets. Yeah, and just going back in that, obviously it was only last year where we saw the FTSE drop like 30% in one morning, and if people, I think most people have a tendency to, quickly sell too quickly. How many people sold in that morning when the FTSE was down 30%? If they came back now, they wouldn't believe that the FTSE actually ended the year like 10-15% up. So my trading strategy is based on trying to pick equities that are undervalued and hold them for the long term, because in some situations, you can't predict when that value will come to the fore. A classic example was Apple. I mean, what's changed with Apple in 12 months? 12 months ago, you could pick up the stock for $95. nobody was interested in buying it. You know, nothing fundamentally has changed with that company. They've not brought any new technology to the fore. Nothing's happened, but sentiment's changed, and it's now $150 a share. You know, I've made a lot of money in Apple in 2016, but even now I can't trade it anymore because I think Apple's fully valued. I don't think there's any value there, but every analyst under the sun is telling you to buy it right now, and that's when you want to get out of stocks like that, when you become, you know, fully valued. Honestly, that's the top of the market when, you know, people are telling you to buy a stock that's up like 50%, where a year ago, you know, you could buy it for like, you know, half the price. Now everybody's telling you buy. And so my portfolio is very, very concentrated, yes, but I'm trying to take advantage of special situations. Like, for example, hopefully that Sky deal will be concluded pretty quickly, and that, you know, we'll be back to cash, and try and, you know, pick other situations. As a stock picker, you know, it's what I do, what I enjoy, trying to, you know, pick situations. It's been very, very difficult, particularly the last 2 or 3 months, to select stocks, considering the rich valuations. You know, I'm, you know, of the Warren Buffett fan club. You know, try and pick something that's good, solid, and has got a PE, price to earnings of close to 10, and I don't think you'll go far wrong. But obviously, you know, most main markets, the price to earnings is closer to 20, particularly for the S&P, for the average equity, and of course you've got stuff like Amazon that trades and price of earnings up to 600. So, you know, it's you know, very, very difficult of late to try and find any value out there.
Sure. I think that's very, very, very helpful for people who are following you and copying you, Martyn, and people who are looking for someone to copy. I think that explains to people that you're, you know, you're a value investor and also event-driven investor. I think that certainly provides you with added value on the platform to anyone looking for that type of strategy. You've got the stats to back that up. I think we've pretty much about covered. We've almost done an hour here. I don't know if you guys have, you've got your dinner on the table. I just wanted to wrap up. There were 1 or 2 questions that the audience asked that we didn't get to cover. I know that Andre had a question for Wes here. He said he saw on the newsfeed that there's mentioned that the graphics cards that are used for mining have been discontinued. He saw that mentioned, and do you think this will affect the Ethereum price and also your, you know, the AMD stock that you've got invested as well?
So it depends. So different cryptos have different algorithms, and it is true that certain types of cards and processors are preferable for mining those different algorithms. I'd have to see the exact post itself, but if we're saying that if he's saying that Ethereum will no longer be allowing cryptos to be mined, could Andre maybe clarify his question?
I replied to him. He asked his question about 10 minutes ago. I'm not too sure if he's let's see if he's maybe still with us. And see if we can get him. Okay. Maybe you can unmute him if he's got a headset. Andre, are you with us? Can you hear me? I just unmuted you here.
Yeah,
Hello?
I can hear you.
Sure. Do you mind? Yeah. You want to clarify for Wes?
Yeah, what I saw on the newsfeed is that the specific graphics card was discontinued, and the newer one that was released was apparently not so very well compatible with the one that that they were using for mining. So I was just wondering how this will affect the AMD stock price, because, I mean, obviously the stock price, I think, was driven up quite a lot because of the demand on this specific graphics card. And if this is no longer available, it might actually have a negative effect on the stock price.
So yeah, it depends on the specifics, but even within I've used AMD graphics cards to do some mining myself, and there are certain cards and chipsets that are more effective because it costs money to mine, so it needs to make economical sense if you're going to do it, given the hardware that you're given. I'm not sure specifically what card you're talking about, but if there are actually a range of cards that you can use for mining. It's not one specifically, and I think it's anticipated. AMD released a new family of processors quite recently that are far more powerful. That these will also be taken advantage of within mining, AI, anything that needs a huge amount of processing power. So I'll have a look out for that article. I'd be interested to see specifically what card it is, but I think having first-hand knowledge, there are a range of chipsets and cards that you can use. So it's probably okay for now. I hope so. Let me read that article. Maybe I need to get out of AMD as fast as possible.
Thanks,
Can I chip
Ray.
in there, Sam?
Yeah, thanks. Sorry, Mark. Yeah.
Can I chip in because I don't
Absolutely, please.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't
do.
seen that article, but I do know a little bit here. In that, the new generation of Radeon cards, the RX 570 and the 580, they're not actually giving a really much of improvement in the sort of mining speed at the minute, but their power consumption has gone up quite a bit. And I think that's what people aren't liking at the minute, because the RX 470 and 480 they've stopped manufacturing them, and they were like very, very efficient after sort of having quite a long time for driver updates to sort of get the most out of them for each sort of watt of power. And where the 570 and the 580 are new, they haven't had that driver refinement yet to sort of like get as much out of the clock speed while being able to tip down the power consumption. So I think that's what some of the debate is about at the minute. So.
Okay, very interesting. But it'll be difficult to figure out where it lands, but the fact that Apple is using AMD chips in their computers and will be for the next few years, that's going to have the opposite effect, and whether that balances out or not remains to be seen.
That's great. I mean, I see that you both have opinions, and views on that stock. So I think that's obviously you've got the page there, the AMD page. You can feel free to tag it and provide your analysis as well on that. So I think that's very interesting. And of course, we could have a future webinar as well, Mark and Wes. We can also discuss stocks as well. We've got quite a few questions, from people here as well. But I don't think we've got time, to cover all of them, unfortunately. We've got to wrap things up. For those people who have asked questions, feel free to drop an email to, popular.investor@etoro.com, or send a message to Wes on his feed, or to Mark on his feed, or to Martyn in relation to their specific stocks, and they'll be happy to answer questions as well. I want to just say I appreciate all of you for joining us today, and of course Martyn, Wes, and Mark for being with us. If you're looking to copy them and follow them as well, check out their bio and feel free to ask them questions. So just thanks very much, all of you. Just before we wrap up, very quick prediction from each one of you. I'll start with Mark, and I'll go to Wes, and then I'll go to Martyn. Quick prediction. We won't hold you to this because there's multiple scenarios of what will happen. A quick prediction of what you think is going to happen. Mark, you first, of what you think is going to happen on when we wake up on Friday morning, or if we're not going to wake up on Friday morning, if we're going to stay through the night to see the results come in. What do you think is going to happen?
I'll be staying up all night, so I'll be on eToro if anybody wants to chat. 4 o'clock in the morning. But I think the Conservatives will scrape it, so and that we'll see the pound rally on that, at least short term. So
sure. And Wes, what do you think?
I'm thinking we'll have a hung parliament. I think, and that'll hit our economy pretty hard for a while, but might not be the bad thing in the medium or long term.
Very, very interesting, Wes. I'm glad you didn't give the same answer as Mark, or otherwise that would have been boring. But no, but then, and Martyn, have you got an alternative viewpoint here?
I think it'll be very tight, but I think
Martyn?
ultimately... Hi, can you hear me? Hello? Hello?
I can hear you.
Yeah, so can I.
Oh, hi. Yeah, I think it'll be very, very tight, but I think ultimately the Conservative vote will actually motivate themselves to get out there and vote and just push them over the line.
We'll see final polls tomorrow, so that'll be interesting.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Then a great night of entertainment ahead on Thursday.